Hi, I'm Jeffrey, and this is AutoAlchemy, the intersection between typology and self-growth. Now, I'm an ENTP, but maybe you aren't so lucky. Maybe you're only an INFJ, the most uncelebrated, underrated type out there. Maybe. Let's sort it out together. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for clicking this thumbnail and checking out this video. It's greatly appreciated. Of course, I know that you're really here for more self-interested purposes. I know that you only found your way to my corner of the internet because you're wondering, how can I know if I'm an INFJ? And it's a good question. I mean, based on everything that's out there on the internet, who wouldn't want to be an INFJ? Internet descriptions make them out to be these misunderstood metaphysical messiahs, which is something that I've poked fun at in my INFJ rap. By the way, I don't recommend using that song as a typing tool, although it is fun to bump in the car. Anyway, I don't think that you would be here if you didn't feel at least a little bit uncertain about your type. And if you do feel uncertain about your type, please pat yourself on the back. Because the truth is, there are very good reasons to doubt that typing ourselves is some easy, straightforward endeavor. Here are a few of those reasons. First of all, online personality tests are majorly lacking in the department of reliability. In the past, the actual Myers-Briggs Type Indicator instrument has been called out for its less than stellar test-retest reliability. This seems to have improved somewhat with time, but it's hard to know just how much. If this official instrument isn't foolproof, why would you expect differently from some random online tests, which I can promise you typically aren't striving to be psychometrically solid? Reason number 2, it's actually very hard to see yourself clearly. As I've mentioned before, this goes back to that old idea that fish don't know that they're in water. When something is a persistent element in your experience, it's very easy for that element to fade into the background so that you only notice the oddities or the things that stick out. If you can believe it, when I was younger, I actually thought of myself as an INTJ for a while. And a big reason for that was my complete lack of perspective when it came to my own nature as a person. Back then, my capacity for generating chaos was automatic. It was a given. And so I was more fixated on the obvious, weaker aspects of my personality. The ideal Jeffrey was a more disciplined, orderly INTJ, and I lost sight of the fact that this was only an ideal that I was striving towards. One last complication when it comes to self-typing is what I call intra-type variation, or variation within a particular personality type. It's no secret that I'm a fan of the objective personality system, and one reason I like their system is because of the room that it allows for variation. In their system, there are actually 32 different INFJ subtypes. What this means is that there is a whole spectrum of INFJs, and the extremes of this spectrum may be quite different from each other, even as they're utilizing the same function stack. But enough about differences, let's talk about what all INFJs share. So the first thing that all INFJs share is an overwhelming preference for introverted intuition over extroverted sensing. The notion of binary coins is central to typology, going all the way back to Carl Jung himself. Jung thought that consciousness couldn't exist without the tension between two opposites, and he observed that human beings end up favoring one mode of being while neglecting or rejecting its opposite. In OP terms, one is a savior and one is a demon. The former is energizing and can create a flow state, while the other, we don't talk about the other. For the INFJ, the coin of introverted intuition versus extroverted sensing is going to be their greatest area of psychological tension. You might find it helpful to think of this as abstract narrowing versus concrete expansion. INFJs will approach situations by filtering them through their introverted intuition. They will often perceive the same overarching pattern operating in many different domains and then use that pattern to simplify their interactions with tangible reality. They will experience that tangible reality as a chaotic flood that can disrupt their careful, controlled, intuitive process. By the way, if you are on the more abstract side but you prefer expanding as opposed to narrowing, then you might be a zany ENFP or an ENTP, like yours truly. Anyway, the second thing that all INFJs share is the same rational axis. Because it's not enough to know that you lead with introverted intuition. INTJs do the exact same thing. They are a cousin type in that way. If you really want to zero in on your type, then you also need to understand the nature of your middle two functions. INFJs are on the TIFE axis, while INTJs are on the FITE axis. This means that for the INFJ, logic is introverted and personal, while values are collective/shared, and for the INTJ, values are more introverted, more personal, and logic is something that is a collective force. And my personal take is that introverted thinking is a little more idiosyncratic and will try to reinvent the wheel just so it understands how it feels to think through a particular problem or topic. Meanwhile, an INTJ with extroverted thinking doesn't even need to reinvent the wheel. Instead, they might manufacture the wheel and sell it to the masses. Their logic has more breadth and more immediate applicability to it. Oh, and just so you know, according to the objective personality system, roughly half of all INFJs will have a preference for extroverted feeling, while the other half, called jumpers, will have a preference for introverted thinking. Some INFJs, therefore, will focus on matters of value and community, while others will fixate more on logical sense-making. Regardless of which one of these secondary functions is serving as a savior, do keep in mind that the gap between them is going to be a lot less severe than the gap between introverted intuition and extroverted sensing. As you're trying to figure out whether or not you're an INFJ, also keep in mind what I said earlier about how hard it is to see ourselves. Watch yourself closely and look for the areas where you're a little too one-sided. Look for where you enter a flow state to the point that you actually start neglecting other parts of your life. If you do this right, then you should at least find some hints about your savior functions. And then you can look for the places where you get stressed out. Look for the things that you wish you could outsource to someone else, or the things that you have zero desire to take responsibility for. This process can tell you something about your demon functions. Anyway, that's all I've got for now, so best of luck in sorting out your type, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of AutoAlchemy. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Until next time.